the 6.5 million Jews murdered by the Nazis, she is probably the most famous. And she always wanted to be. While writing in her diary about the struggles of hiding from certain death by the Nazis, Anne Frank dreamed of being a writer. Sadly, she didn't live to see how her memories touched millions, but she undoubtedly left a lasting legacy. In today's video, the moving story of Anne Frank. Anne Frank was born in Frankfurt. She was the second child of Otto Heinrich Frank and Edith Hollander, German Jews living in a mixed community. The children were raised alongside Catholic, Protestant, and Jewish friends. The Franks were Reform Jews. They kept many Jewish traditions but weren't very strict in their observance. Otto, a former German army lieutenant in World War I, was now a businessman deeply invested in his daughter's education. He owned an extensive private library and encouraged both his girls to read. Anne was often compared to her sister Margot, 3 years her senior, seen as kind and proper, while Anne was curious, outgoing, and impulsive. She disliked these comparisons, feeling disadvantaged next to her sister. They enjoyed a peaceful life in Frankfurt with family and friends. But this was before Nazi anti-Jewish policies disrupted and ultimately destroyed their lives. On March 13, 1933, weeks before Hitler's rise, the Nazi Party won Frankfurt's elections, sparking immediate anti-Semitic demonstrations. Otto Frank quickly realized the serious problems looming ahead. That year, his wife Edith moved with their daughters to her mother's house in Aachen. Otto initially stayed in Frankfurt, but was offered to open an Opekta branch in Amsterdam. He went to the Netherlands to start the business and prepare for his family's arrival. In 1934, Edith moved with their daughters to Amsterdam, where Otto had been for months. They settled in a new southern neighborhood where many Jewish families from Germany had already moved, feeling safer in the Netherlands than in what was actually their homeland. In exile, the parents remained focused on their daughter's education. Margot attended a public school, while Anne went to a Montessori school. Margot excelled in math, while Anne shone in reading and writing. In summers of 35 and 36, she enjoyed carefree holidays with her great-aunt in Switzerland, making friends there. Otto Frank had led the Dutch branch of German company Opekta since 1933. In 1938, he and his friend Herman van Pels, a Jewish butcher who also fled, started a spice company. Otto worked hard to secure income, having seen his father's bank, weakened by the 1929 crisis, seized by Nazis. The family faced Nazi cruelty firsthand through Edith's brother, Walter Hollander, arrested on Kristallnacht and taken to a concentration camp before being allowed to travel to the Netherlands with a special permit. Still, Otto remained optimistic even after seeing synagogues burned. But his hope turned to fear when Poland was attacked in September 1939, starting World War II. Jewish exiles worried about Hitler's threat to the Low Countries, which tried to stay neutral. On May 10, 1940, Germany invaded and occupied the country. Dutch troops surrendered and Queen Wilhelmina fled to exile in London. It soon became clear that Jews in Holland would face the same fate as those in other occupied areas. Otto and Edith Frank realized they could no longer hide the political situation from their daughters. Until then, the parents had tried to shield them and maintain a sense of normalcy. But now, Anne was confused. Her fighting spirit made her refuse to give in. She was used to standing her ground. Otto tried repeatedly to get asylum in the US or Cuba, with help from a friend close to Eleanor Roosevelt. But he was unsuccessful. More and more anti-Jewish laws were being enacted. Their rights were stripped away, excluding them from social life and public institutions. For Anne, a Hollywood fan, being banned from cinemas was particularly tough. She left her school and friends to attend a special Jewish lyceum. All Jews had to register themselves and even their bicycles. When forced to wear the Star of David, many Dutch people showed solidarity. However, a Dutch National Socialist Party was established. To protect his company, Otto Frank handed control to two Aryan colleagues. On June 12, 1942, Anne Frank celebrated her last birthday at home, receiving a small diary, a red and white checkered notebook she had pointed out to her father in a shop window days before. That same day, Anne started writing in Dutch, describing herself, her family, and her daily life at home and school. Otto Frank had set up a hideout at the back of his company building at 263 Prinsengracht, as suggested by one of his employees. The main building was unremarkable, old and typical of that Amsterdam neighborhood. The annex was a three-story structure connected to the rear of the main building. The first floor had two small rooms, above them a large room and a small one, with a narrow staircase to the attic on the top floor. The total area was about 50 square meters. In front of the offices, a hallway led to a bookcase hiding a door to steep stairs up to the annex. The Frank family's situation became critical when on July 5, 1942, Margot Franke got a call from Amsterdam's Central Jewish Immigration Unit, ordering his deportation to a labor camp. If Margot hadn't gone, they'd have detained the whole family. After the call, Otto Franke decided to move his family to a hideout earlier than planned. Since Jews couldn't use public transport, they had to walk several kilometers from home to the refuge, carrying all they could, layering clothes upon clothes on their bodies as they couldn't risk being seen with luggage. The next day, July 6th, the family began a hidden life, as escaping occupied Netherlands seemed impossible. Helmut Silberberg, Annie's friend, visited their home and found they were gone. To cover up, they left the house messy with a note suggesting a sudden escape to Switzerland. They went to Otto's Two Companies building, located facing one of Amsterdam's main canals. 6 people risked their lives to keep them hidden. Jan Gis, the only non-employee, was a social worker and Dutch resistance member. He often visited the secret annex, bringing ration cards and books. Miep was responsible for bringing provisions, meat, vegetables, and library books to those in hiding. Johannes Kleiman was Otto's right-hand man. He suggested the idea of preparing a hiding place in the back of the offices. From 1941, he was listed as Opekta's director, though Otto remained in charge. Miep was also responsible for taking care of the house. Once she had to bring insecticides due to a flea infestation in the secret annex. Victor Kugler would bring magazines and newspapers. Beb Voskuil managed the needs of those in hiding and took courses. She enrolled in a Latin correspondence course actually meant for Anne's sister Margot. Lastly, there was Johan Voskuil, Beb's father. He worked in the ground floor warehouse, ensuring colleagues didn't. He noticed those in hiding and each morning discreetly disposed of the family's waste. A week after the Franks moved to the secret annex, 3 more people arrived as planned. Herman van Pels, his wife Auguste, and their 15-year-old son Peter. He showed up with his cat Mushi. This upset Annie as her parents made her leave her own kitten with neighbors. On the left was Edith and Otto's room. Next to it was Anne and Margot's room. It was only 7 square meters. To the right, a shared bathroom with a sink and toilet. Up steep stairs was the Van Pels's room, doubling as a living room and kitchen with a sink and stove. Everyone knew absolute silence was required from 8:30 to 9 a.m. as warehouse workers started their day on the ground floor. The Franks and Van Pels couldn't use the bathroom or even walk during these risky hours as pipes ran through the warehouse. They used this time to read. Only after 9 a.m., when their protectors arrived at the office and warehouse, could they relax a bit while still staying quiet. Their lunch hour coincided with the workers' lunch break. Only at 6 p.m. when all employees left could they emerge from hiding and move around the building. Otto and Herman continued working for Opekta. They worked nights and weekends. Initially hoping for freedom in weeks, they ended up hiding there for over 2 years. During all this time, they never once went out. The atmosphere was tense. They lived in fear and uncertainty. This led to constant arguments. Personal conflicts became more evident. She often argued with her increasingly desperate mother. Ioto always tried to restore calm. Adolescence was hard, confined with her parents. They constantly feared being discovered. And that's not all. They feared their protectors might not return. Nazi surveillance of non-Jews was fierce. They knew people were helping Jews. The punishment for helping Jews was death. Not to mention the constant bombings. Anna and the others could only hope none would hit them. If that happened, they couldn't use the underground shelters built to keep civilians safe. Miep Gies brought not just food but also news about the war. At noon, the protectors ate with those in hiding. Late afternoon, after staff left the still operating company, they'd listen to the radio. Sometimes the news was very concerning, like the first train headed to Auschwitz concentration camp, or when Jews were stripped of their rights, or when Jews were stripped of their nationality. Other times were hopeful, like D-Day or the failed attempts on Hitler's life. She read extensively, honing her style and becoming an independent writer. Her writing skills and confidence as an author grew steadily. She even wrote, "Free people can't grasp how much books mean to those in hiding." In November, Fritz Pfeffer, a dentist and family friend, arrived. Tensions rose quickly as he shared a room with Annie, who found him unbearable. They fought over the room's only desk for reading and writing. She argued with Margot but noted an unexpected bond forming between them. Her diary clearly showed she was much closer to her father. Later, she also began to appreciate Peter van Pels's kindness. He was apparently her first and only love, as they shared a kiss. However, that relationship ended quickly. In her diary, she clearly shows awareness of deportations and rewards for denouncing Jews. She spent most of her time reading, studying, and writing in her diary. Besides events, she wrote about feelings, beliefs, and ambitions she didn't share with others. In late March 1944, a Dutch government member in London, Minister Gerrit Boskin, asked countrymen to keep letters, diaries, and documents proving their experiences during the Nazi occupation. Anne decided to write a book about her time in hiding, which she titled The Secret Annex, based on her diary entries. Many believe Anne Frank had just one diary, but she quickly filled the one she got for her 13th birthday. Her sister and their protectors gave her more notebooks and paper to keep writing. You can find this information on the official annefrank.org website. Excited by the idea of finally fulfilling her dream of becoming a writer after all the horror ended, she continued writing actively until her last entry on August 1st, 1944, just 3 days before the Nazis discovered their family's hiding place on August 4th, 1944. They had been in hiding there for 760 days. Dutch agents under Nazi command raided the shelter where 8 people were hiding and arrested them all. To this day, it's unclear who betrayed the family. Some believe it was a Gestapo informant, while other investigations suggest it was accidental. SS agents investigating illegal employment in the building stumbled upon the 8 people in hiding. In 2022, a team of international investigators concluded that it's highly likely Jewish notary Arnold Vandenberg revealed the Franks' hideout to protect his own family, though some historians have questioned this theory. The truth is, agents not only caught the 8 in hiding, but also 2 protectors, Johannes Kleiman and Victor Kugler. Fortunately, both survived. Kleiman was quickly freed due to Red Cross pressure given his poor health. Kugler escaped 6 months after his capture. He fled during chaos from an Allied attack as Nazis moved him with 600 other prisoners. In the end, Otto Frank ensured all annexed protectors received Israel's Righteous Among the Nations award. The 8 Jews were first taken to Westerbork camp in the Netherlands. On September 3, 1944, they were sent by train to Auschwitz-Birkenau in occupied Poland. This was the final train to make this journey. Birkenau had 4 massive gas chambers where prisoners were killed. Upon arrival, men and women were separated. It was the last time Otto saw his wife and 2 daughters. Of the 2,011 Jews on the train, 371 were deemed unfit for work and sent straight to the gas chambers. Annie, Margot, Edith, and August stayed at Auschwitz-Birkenau camp for forced labor, while Otto, Hermann, Peter, and Fritz were taken to Auschwitz first, about 3 kilometers away, also for forced labor. Hermann was the first to die, killed in the gas chambers in 1944. He was 46 years old. That year, Pfeffer, the dentist, died in the camp, likely from intestinal inflammation due to harsh working conditions, as reported on annefrank.org. Peter van Pels, just 18, died of illness at a camp in Austria on May 10, 1945, 5 days after American troops liberated it. He was 18 years old. Edith last saw her daughters on October 30, 1944, when they were sent with August to Bergen-Belsen camp in northern Germany. There, people faced starvation, extreme lack of hygiene, and overcrowding, leading to the spread of diseases like typhoid. In dire conditions, she was hungry, ill, in rags, infested with lice, and deeply sad, likely having witnessed her sister Margot's death. She was 19 years old. Anne Frank, who'd become one of the most famous writers, died in February 1945 at the Nazi concentration camp. But it wasn't in the gas chambers as many have claimed. She died from illness, probably typhus. Her mother Edith had died in Auschwitz on January 6, weeks before her daughters, just shy of her 45th birthday. Otto, their father, was the only one of the 4 to survive the extermination camps. In fact, he was the sole survivor of all 8, as Auguste also perished, though the circumstances of her death remain unknown. She was 44 years old when she died. Otto Frank returned to Amsterdam and learned of his wife's death and his daughter's transfer to Bergen-Belsen. Initially hopeful they survived, in July 1945, the Red Cross confirmed Annie and Margot's deaths. It was then that Miep gave him the diary. After reading it, Otto remarked he hadn't realized how well Annie had documented their time together. To fulfill Annie's diary-expressed wish to be a writer, he decided to try publishing it. Years later, when asked about his initial reaction, he simply said, "I never knew my little Annie was so profound." Otto finally made Annie's dream of becoming a famous writer come true. On June 25, 1947, 2 years post-war, Annie Frank's diary was published in Dutch as The Secret Annex, as she'd wished. Since then, her work has been translated into over 70 languages.